big news. And it's developing seemingly with every insider report that comes out every 5 to 10 minutes that all kind of echo each other but have a little bit different of sauce on it.
Yep.
We are now at the point where Davante Adams only wants to go to the Jets, but the Las Vegas Raiders will accept the best deal. So there's reports from insiders who are getting comments from around the NFL. Our sources from the NFL are telling us that Davante Adams only wants to go to the New York Jets or maybe the New Orleans Saints. So maybe that's why teams are not acting as if they are as interested, or maybe teams are making that excuse to say the reason why we're not doing it is because we know if he came here, have to give a contract, he's not going to do his entire thing. But the way everybody's talking is that he's going to the Jets. That is seemingly how every insider is chatting about this situation. Chuck Pagano, if Davante Adams ends up with the Jets this year, does that make them even more of a Super Bowl contender here 5 weeks in? Does it make their offense more efficient? Does it make everything in New York better if you drop Davante Adams in there this particular week? I would say yes, okay, because I am just a human who, who's just a football stooge. Happen to have front row seat to a lot of things. But for me, with the history that Aaron and Davante have of him telling us numerous stories, both on air and off air, that me and Davante Adams just kind of have the same wavelength. We're kind of floating at the same dimension on a field. Everybody else is at 3D. We're kind of at 5D. And whenever we're on the field, we know what each other want more than anybody else, which is why we had so much success. He gets a bag from Las Vegas, tries to go and play with his college teammate, Derek Carr. He leaves. Now he sees what it's like with 5 different quarterbacks, couple of turnovers in the organization, not great football. He wants out. He wants to save his career. If he goes back to Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, they're immediately great, right? Offensively? Or is that just a little bit of an overreaction, a little bit too dramatic to think like that?
I think it's a little bit of an overreaction.
Come on!
Chuck! I mean, you can say Garrett Wilson, and they're talking about, hey, they thought this Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson thing would come together sooner than it has. And that obviously is a work in progress. They've got Lazard there, got the 2 running backs, obviously, and now you drop Davante. He is a hell of a player. He is going to be 31 years old. They're going to have to navigate the gap to the cap. Do they have the money to pay the contract? I'm kind of wanting to know, like they scored. What'd they score last week? 9 points. Was that?
No touch.
A field goal?
Weather was terrible.
Yeah, 3 field goals.
Missed PAT or no touchdowns?
No touchdowns.
The weather was bad, though. It was bad weather. They had a lot of offsides.
You know how many bad weather games Aaron Rodgers has played in?
Well, that's what he was saying.
Green
Bay. Not in Jersey.
He was actually saying.
And scored a million points.
Well, that's what he was saying. I think that was
snow.
part of what he was saying. It was cold.
It was snow, not rain.
Yeah, I remember because he had the long johns on.
The waffle thing.
The waffle thing. You know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you knew you were in trouble.
So you think you dropped Davante. So everything to your point, you dropped Davante in there, immediate uptick, we think. That's what people are saying, too, as well. That's the expectation.
Could be. I mean, they've got the defense, they've got the players, but, they still got to set up the formation. They got to put a game plan together. They got to call the right plays in the right situations.
What's he saying?
I mean, this guy's an asshole. Look, you put Davante in any offense, it's
They're
an
going to
uptick.
get better.
It sounds like he's questioning the offensive coordinator.
It does, doesn't it? It's like game plan, strategies. You got to put them into formations, all these. Yeah.
That's something to think about. Does Davante, after seeing how everything's going with Salah in very publicly in press conferences, does he want to go dive into that ring?
You pick him up out of Las Vegas, which you've been saying has potentially been an issue since the beginning of offseason whenever everybody else was getting wide receiver contracts. He was looking for a new wide receiver contract because he only has this year left of guaranteed money, and he's seeing a lot of wide receivers that are nowhere near as good as him get paid a lot of money, and he was wondering, well, Bambi. So you said quietly that's been happening behind the scenes for Las Vegas. You told us that. You've said that on your show. This has been taking place. Now it all comes to a head, and everybody's saying he's looking to go to the Jets or the Saints, but more specifically, the Jets to get back into an offense that he knows with Hackett and a quarterback, obviously, that he's had a lot of success with in Aaron Rodgers, and they have a chance to potentially go and win. I heard your take on this. You don't think that's going to happen or a good move, or the Jets don't automatically come super? Go ahead.
I think that, he's got $13 million coming to him. Now, the Jets have the room because of the Riddick thing, which we won't get into, so they could easily do it. But what happens with the compensation? I mean, the Raiders come out and say they want a second-round pick. Well, who's going to pay the $13 million? Look, I think he would help the Jets. The Jets have a struggle to make big plays down the field, right? Last week in their game against Denver, their front got torn up. Denver's defensive front did a great job against them. But I think Adams would add something to him. I mean, Garrett Wilson hasn't been able to get going in the offense. there hasn't seemed to have been a chemistry with their quarterback and the receivers. And we know, and I'm in the same camp as you are, the quarterback is exceptional. I mean, nobody throws the ball in locations where he does. It's really remarkable, but he needs everybody on the same page, and it's struggling, and I think this would help their team. However, I think it's hard to maneuver. I think the Raiders have to give up a lot. And if you're going to give up a contract, if you're going to not redo his contract, and you're going to bring him into your team, like let's take, for example, the Saints. They could use him. They talked about him going there. Well, next year his cap number is at like $35 million. The Saints are $100 million over the cap. How do they get him under? You can't trade a high pick for a one-year contract, and I think there lies the problem. And I think it's a hard deal to do. This deal should have been done in the offseason when Tom Telesco got in there, because this problem has been brewing since February.
Michael Lombardi's son was the offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders last year, which is a note that should be mentioned during this entire conversation. Now, Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce are, in charge of the Raiders. They said in the offseason, though, he was going to be one of the pillars of the Raider way going forward, and Max Crosby was going to be a guy they're going to build around. What do you think happened here in the last 4 weeks? Same contract stuff, or you think it's just contract stuff? And then on that note,
I think Davante's been very clear, and he's been very private about it. I'm not saying anything that he's done is wrong. I mean, he's been very upfront about what he wants, and he didn't show up to the off-season program for a bunch of other reasons. But I think essentially, nothing says I'm sorry better than money. And unless you're willing to reward the contract, I think it's going to be a problem. I've never seen a guy not go to – Max Crosby didn't go to the game on Sunday with a hamstring. That, to me, bothers me. That tells me there's something going on in that locker room. Now, look, Antonio Pierce has taken over. He was the interim coach. When you're the substitute teacher, it's a lot easier to get the students to listen and behave and do all those things. When you become the full-time teacher, all of a sudden you have to change your personality. We've really only seen two coaches go from interim status to full-time status and have a longevity in their NFL careers. Jason Garrett being one, Doug Marrone in Jacksonville being the other. So this is a challenging job, and you change because the position requires you to change. You're a head coach, and the players see that change, and they're like, what happened to the dude that was last year? It's a hard thing, Pat, and I think it's a tough situation to be put in.
So he called Davante 17 in presser earlier this week whenever talking about injuries, and then there's a full cut-up with the way he's chatting about Davante. Those two are on the outs, you think? Or are they on the outs because of the business side of it all? Or
I think they're on the outs because of the business. I think, to me, look, I can't prove this, I don't know, but as Chuck eloquently said before I came on, you can't lie to players, you can't mislead players. And there seems to be a disconnect here, but there seems to be more than one disconnect, because I think Crosby has always been the team guy, but when he doesn't show up to a game, that tells me something without knowing something.
So the Raiders and Crosby have come out and said that the trainers for the Raiders told him to stay home and stay off his feet, and that is why he missed it. Now, granted, I mean, you obviously can take that how you want. That is what they are saying. That is their side of it. And Max Crosby, nothing I know of Max Crosby wouldn't be all in for the Raiders all the time.
He was tweeting throughout the game too, positive Raiders.
So he was there, but his feet were rested.
Kicked up.
Nonetheless, the Davante situation is certainly one to keep an eye on, because Max and Davante were going to be the pillars, and then now here we are going into week 5, and it's like Davante's going to be a Jet within the next week or so.
No doubt.
And that $13 million one goes down by $977,000 each week, which is a game check.
Let's not forget the Aaron, when he walked off that golf course at Lake Tahoe, when he gave that subtle little saying that we expect Davante. That goes back to July. I mean, so look, I think this is in the Jets' court. I can't see another team coming in. There's teams with cap room, there's no question. Cleveland has a ton of cap room, but they'll put that cap money into next year, right? They need that money for next year. They're so far over the cap. Same thing with the Cowboys. Much the same thing with the Saints. I mean, they're $100 million over. The Jets are sitting there perfectly because they have the room. Now, you've got to get the Raiders to figure out, okay, we've had enough of this. We're going to get rid of them. We're going to trade them. You take them, and we won't take a lot of compensation. That's a hard thing to do, especially when they have to eat a lot of acceleration on his contract.
Hey, Lombo, those next 2 years, 2025, 2026, non-guaranteed there, what does that mean? Can they renegotiate a one-year contract and those just be getting knocked out?
They can go in. like the Jets could come in and take him over, and take in the salary, they could say, look, we'll guarantee X amount for next year, we'll guarantee X amount in the next year for skill or for injury, however they want to do that. They certainly could do that, and they have the cap room. See, here's the key: you have to have the cap room to make the trade. The Raiders aren't going to renegotiate the contract to then make the trade for you.
Lombo, hold on one second. Hold on. So if, let's say, Tay goes to the Jets, gets traded to the Jets. Let's say they give up a third for him. It ends up being a third. And they're saying it's going to be a good third, or it's depending upon how it is, maybe you get it, a third instead of a second. Can they renegotiate this deal that has 3 years left, including this year, with non-guaranteed money? They can renegotiate it and just make it a one-year deal with no money owed over the next 2 years, so he becomes a free agent at the end of this year. What's the dead cap for that? Is there a dead cap situation for that, or who ends up having...
There's no dead cap for the Jets. This is an easy deal to do for the Jets. There's no dead cap. All the dead cap will be incurred by the Raiders, who did this contract originally. So they would incur the debt. Now they could do it of July 1 of next year, or they have to eat it all in this year. We'll see how they handle that. But to me, that's where I think that's $40 million. They have like $40 million of acceleration if they take it on now, which they don't have the room to do that.
So if the Jets trade for him, and let's say they renegotiate somebody's contract to open up more money this year. Let's say they tear up the current contract. Okay, then they make it $20 million guaranteed for this year, for the rest of the year. That would have been like 5 weeks, obviously, removed from the $20 million salary. Fully guaranteed, and then he's a free agent after this year. You're saying the Raiders would still incur dead cap hits because of the deal that they negotiated, but the Jets, Davante, free after this year from each other.
They would then whatever the new contract the Jets did, whatever acceleration they pushed into future years would stay with them. But they have to take Davante's contract as it is right now for a day. Then they can renegotiate. They put it on their cap for a day. Then they can renegotiate it. What the Jets certainly could do that.
What if they tear it up, though, completely, and it's only a one-year deal? What if it is just the rest of this year?
Then they, as long as they have the cap room, they can tear it up completely. But they have to have his Raider contract that they make the trade on his cap for the one day that they trade him for. Got it. They trade him. So what you do is you tell the Davante's agent, look, once you get here, here's the deal we're going to do. He signs. We go 24 hours. Here's the new contract. We'll turn that deal in.
Would Tay want one-year deal? Because Aaron said he's going to play multiple years, I think, at a couple different times. But, like, for Tay, if it is like a one-year rental, then he's saying, well, what team will give up a high pick for a one-year rental? It's like maybe a team that thinks they're all fired if they don't have a good year. So maybe it like...
well, maybe he does a 2-year deal, too, if he thinks Rodgers is going to play 2 years. It's like, all right, I'll do this year and next year.
How much you going to give Lombo to the 32? He's going to be 32, right?
He's 31.
Right.
They're all trying to age him. He's 31 years old. Jeez Louise.
Right now he's 31?
Yeah.
He'll be 32
you're
next
talking,
year.
you're going to be 32 next year, and
that's not 42.
God forbid. I mean, I hope so. You know what I mean? We never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Well, I think that's the sticking
Get wrong
point.
algorithm. I don't know if we're going to be around next year. Jeez Louise.
And who knows what they promised?
Who's paying the $13 million?
What's that?
I think that's the question is, will the Raiders pay some of the salary? I think that's going to be some of the issue. If the pick's higher, if the Jets give up a third-round pick for them, I think the Raiders would probably pay some of the salary. They would have to. That doesn't count as paying for a draft pick, but I think they would have to do something. I mean, look, it's hard to trade players in season, especially knowing that, you may not be able to have them. You can't rent a player and give up a really good, valuable resource like a second-round pick for a one-year rental.
Yeah, but to your point, too, they could put, like, in the incentives where it's like if he plays 80% of snaps, it could become a higher pick.
A second round, it's a third rounder. It could become a second rounder, especially if we win, yada, 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 because we don't care. We go all in.
Yeah.
Fascinating situation development. Then the Saints obviously are in it because Derek Carr's down there, and it's like the Raiders are just taking the best offer, right? They don't give a shit.
Now, he has a no-trade clause, so they can take the best offer, but no team's going to take them. They're going to be the anti-Jets here. They're not going to take him without knowing what the kid wants before he comes in. This is not going to be like Hassan Riddick, where you take the guy, we didn't know he wanted a new contract. Well, you did know. You just didn't get it done. But I think that's going to be the key, right?